Here. Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7:30 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, February 16th, 2016, in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to conduct a board workshop. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Thursday, February 11th, 2016, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star-Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap into Westfield, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Dana, can we have a roll call, please?
Mark Friedman.
Here.
Brendan Galligan. Rob Garrison.
Here.
Chris Langhart.
Here.
Jenny Lights.
Here.
Gretchen Olig.
Here.
Peggy Oster.
Here.
Charles Ostroff.
Here.
Mitch Slater.
Here.
Mark, can you lead us in the flag salute?
Sure. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Announcements. Rob, do you have any announcements on your end?
Certainly do. In performing arts area, congratulations to the following Westfield High School juniors who were accepted to All-State Band this year. And I'll borrow from my colleague here and apologize in advance for screwing up any names. Dale Bayert, trumpet, All-State Wind Ensemble and Orchestra. Michael Haig, clarinet, All-State Symphonic Band. And Matthew Schiff, clarinet, All-State Symphonic Band. The concert will be held Saturday, February 20th at NJ Packard North.
Thanks. Chris?
I do not.
Mitch?
Peggy, this was not an announcement. Okay, go on for a while. Okay, I'm good.
Is that no?
It's like, oh,
I have an
it said
announcement.
announcements.
Congratulations to Westfield High School senior Felicia Murmur, who has been named a candidate for the United States Presidential Scholars Program by the White House Commission on Presidential Scholars and the United States Department of Education. According to the letter received by Superintendent of Schools Margaret Dolan from the U.S. Department of Education, this recognition is to recognize and honor some of our nation's most distinguished graduating seniors, who are chosen on the basis of their accomplishments in many areas: academic and artistic success, leadership and involvement in school and the community, and represent excellence in education and the promise of greatness in America's youth. In addition to her academic ability, Felicia is co-president of Westfield's Model United Nations Club. She is truly a compassionate and caring young woman, states her guidance counselor, Darlene Hill. Her empathy extends beyond Westfield High School, as she is passionate about helping people who are facing adversity. She has become actively involved with Girls Learn International and feels empowered to create solutions that address obstacles that girls are encountering worldwide. We send our heartiest congratulations to Felicia.
Thanks, Jenny. Charles, do you have anything?
Yes, under elementary, congratulations goes out to McKinley School families who donated 3,291 canned and boxed food items to a local food bank as a part of the school's Super Bowl food drive. This just about doubled the amount collected last year, according to McKinley principal, and I'll apologize for pronunciation, Mark Bueno. We simply demolished a record, and in doing so, helped more and more people. He added that we want our students to learn that the collective efforts matters. Congratulations to McKinley School families.
Brendan?
Enjoy a night of classical music performed by the members of the Westfield High School orchestras on Saturday, February 27th at 7 p.m. at the First Methodist Church, number 1 East Broad Street, Westfield, New Jersey. This is a fundraiser concert to benefit the orchestra's trip to Boston, Massachusetts, where they will be performing.
This is from the high school. Congratulations to 4 Westfield High School seniors who were named 2016 National Merit Finalists: Albert Chen, Ryan Dang, Nova Key, and Sarah Steiner. You may recall that these students attended our board meeting in early October, shortly after they had been named National Merit Semifinalists. We congratulate them all on earning the finalist ranking based on their continued academic and co-curricular accomplishments. They represent the highest scoring students, approximately 1% on qualifying, and who show exceptional academic ability and potential for success in rigorous college studies. Congratulations.
Thanks. Peggy.
I also have an announcement from the high school. Congratulations to the following Westfield High School choral students who participated in the Central Jersey Music Education Association's chorus concert at Monroe High School in Monroe, New Jersey in February. Laura Serace, Kylan Kramer, Olivia McElhenry, Max Wazalewski, Noah Bram, Allison Brown, Charlotte Fountain Jardine, Laura Singer, Abby Rothenberg, Joey Maldonado, and Lauren Brumfield. These students had auditioned in December and were accepted from hundreds of students who auditioned. Congratulations.
Thanks. Our next Board of Ed meeting will be held Tuesday, March 1st at 7:30 PM here at 302 Elm Street. The complete agenda will be available on Friday, February 26th on the Board of Ed website. Do you have any announcements? No. Next item on the agenda is to recognize the public for agenda items only. I know that some of you are probably here in connection with the proposal for lights at Kaler Field. You're welcome to speak now, or if you'd rather, it might make more sense to wait until after Mr. Franks makes his proposal, and then you can come to the podium. Anybody want to come up? Okay, then we will move forward to the superintendent's report. Dr. Dolan.
Thank you. It's just a few weeks ago that the community came out and supported the bond questions that we had, and we are trying to get to work on implementing those bond questions as soon as possible. One of the topics that we talked about, and that's in there, are the public address system and also the security communication systems in the school. They are quite old. They're over 20 years old, and we've been looking into what is appropriate in this day and age and what is going to be appropriate for our schools. So we've invited Brian Auker, who is our Chief Technology Officer, to come and to give us a sense of the type of systems that we are looking at regarding that.
Thank you, Dr. Dolan. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to give you a brief presentation this evening and even a short video demonstration of just what Dr. Dolan just mentioned, the new public address and communication systems that we're looking to implement in all of the schools here in the school district. As she mentioned, this was part of the recent bond that was passed, and we will be starting actually on the implementation installation of these new systems at some of the schools within the next month, as a matter of fact. So we are moving on this as quickly as possible. A project of this magnitude, however, does take a long time. So our priorities first are, we're starting with the high school and the intermediate schools, because those buildings, if you recall, had their networking infrastructure upgraded over the last year or two, so they have been prepared already to accept this new equipment that will be going in to support this system. As part of the bond that was just passed, we do have that same upgraded network equipment going in at all the elementary schools this summer. So hopefully, as part of that installation, we'll be able to do this communications system upgrade at the same time or shortly thereafter. So to start with the presentation, I really want to highlight and explain something that's very important. When we think about the clocks and we think about the intercom systems that are in a school, it's a very traditional analog system. There is a speaker and there is a little push button to call the main office, and that's about all it does. Principal can go over in the main office and go up to the head end unit and make an announcement out across the PA system to the school, to an individual classroom. It's very basic, it's very simple. The clocks, they're all very, again, just like we have here in this room, typical analog clock. We're looking to move forward into the next generation of systems. And one of the most important things is that while we talk a lot about the hardware, and that's what everyone is going to see, they're going to see that new fancy clock and everything in the classroom, what really is behind this and kind of what makes all the magic work in this system is the software behind the scenes. So tonight, what I'll actually be doing is not only showing you the hardware, but I'd like to show you a lot of the new functionality that this system will bring to the Westfield School District. Next slide here, this demonstrates or will show you, these are the typical devices that we plan on installing. There we show a typical clock intercom combo that will be going into a classroom. Also a unit that will be going in the hallway. Right now, all of our hallways have ceiling mounted speakers pointing directly down at the floor. These units are on pedestal mounts that will be attached to the wall and will stick out into the hallway where they'll broadcast sound in both directions. It's a double-sided unit. There's a display and a speaker on the opposite side as well. So it's viewable and you're able to hear the audio from both directions. So the display and the speaker will broadcast the sound down to the hallway much better than our current directional speakers that are broadcasting literally down into the floor. The system will also be incorporating indoor speakers where necessary if we have to increase the amount of volume, for example, very noisy environments such as the cafeteria. While we may put a couple of these larger displays, those speakers will not be enough in those very noisy environments. So we'll have additional indoor speakers. We'll augment the system with the indoor speakers. And of course, the system will not be complete if we do not put outdoor speakers. So there will be outdoor speakers on the outside of buildings. So again, announcements can be heard outside, gym classes, things like that. We'll be able to hear the announcements. So this does give you a little brief overview of the devices. I do have the next slide here that just goes into just a little bit more detail about some of these features. I mentioned, of course, there is the integrated speaker, and here I'm specifically referring to the classroom unit. There are some units that have double speakers, one speaker on each end. Again, they're larger units for in gymnasiums, cafeterias. So we have already walked both intermediate schools and the high school to try to determine devices, and we have counts there, and we'll be working on the elementary schools very soon. So the integrated speaker, we also have the LED display. So here you see it in clock mode. We're showing the date and the time. But this is a LED display board. We're able to broadcast messages across it. So scrolling messages can go across the face. So it could be just general announcements, or it could be an emergency alert, could be notifying everyone if there's a fire drill, whatever. So we're able to now broadcast announcements. And in addition, if you take a look, there are 3 small squares right above that display. Each one of those is an individually controlled strobe light. One is red, one is white, and one is blue. So the announcements can be color-coded. So for example, if it is fire, that would be red, obviously. And we're able to do, white might just be general announcements. So the strobes are able to go off to first alert everyone and get everyone's attention that there is a message coming on the board. So we have the strobe lights available on the unit. And finally, as I mentioned before, in a traditional intercom, you have to have some sort of a call button. So this system integrates with our telephone system that we have. And in most of our classrooms, we do not have telephones in the classrooms. The video that you're going to be seeing in a little bit, that school district does, and they use their telephones as their call button. We'll be putting in traditional call buttons, but the call buttons also serve a secondary purpose. They can also be used as a panic button. So in case there is an emergency, whatever it may be in the classroom, it's something simple as, there's a pipe leaking in the classroom and they need a custodian right away, or they do have more of an important emergency. The button can be used to signal to the main office, and an alert will immediately be sent out to multiple individuals in the building, the designated first responders, so that they know that there is a serious emergency of some type in the classroom. It's not just a simple page to the main office, then the main office has to track the first responders in the school. Next, the software has some other features. I've already mentioned that it's compatible with the existing phone system. Some of the notification features, of course, it does all the basic. It controls all the bells and the clocks in the buildings, which we would expect from this type of a system. It does your typical PA announcements. One unique feature is there's both on and off campus announcements. Once a month, administrators come down here to Elm Street and we have a monthly meeting. During that meeting, if one of the principals had an emergency at their school, they of course would be designated as one of the first responders in their building. They could be sitting here, not located at their building, and someone could press that panic button or pick up a phone and call 911. And even though they're not on site, they would immediately be alerted on their cell phone to know that they have something going on in their building. So that's an important feature, that on and off campus alerts are happening. They don't even have to be in the school district. They may be out at a workshop somewhere. And again, they would get those same alerts. So they would immediately be contacted and they would know what's going on. Continuing, some of the emergency features. The system, of course, has a capability to quickly put the building into a lockdown mode, which, again, we'll see demonstrated in the video coming up. Panic and duress. I mentioned the panic buttons in the classrooms. 911 call alerting. Because this integrates with our telephone system that we currently have, anyone in the building that picks up a telephone and dials 911, as soon as they do that, again, first responders in the building are immediately alerted, and we know exactly from which telephone a 911 call originated. Now when that happens, we have to go hunting around the building to find out who called 911. So that's a major improvement that we have. And finally, there's the system will tie in with the physical security that we have in our buildings right now with our alarm systems. And you'll notice that some of the things such as magnetic door holders that hold the doors open, in case of an emergency, they can be activated and tied into the system that would release them, and the doors would shut. Again, in case they're fire doors. So, in the demo video or demonstration video that I have, these are the items that they will demonstrate. They will demonstrate the 911 functionality and what happens if there's a 911 call. They will be demonstrating the classroom call button. Again, I believe in the video, they use their desk telephone, but it works the same way as a desk telephone, and you program a button on the phone, or if you actually use the physical button located on the wall. They're going to talk about making district-wide announcements. So, for example, one of the things that we've talked about is after hours, our sports teams are out on the athletic fields and they're practicing. The athletic director finds out that there is a storm headed in this direction, and she needs to get everyone off the fields immediately. She would be able to log into the system and make a district-wide announcement to all the exterior speakers of all the schools, notifying everyone to please seek shelter immediately. There is a storm headed in this direction. So that is an important function that we have. So the district functionality of being able to alert all schools at one time. They will show a little bit of the bell scheduling and paging, how easy it is to adjust the bell schedule. They're going to demonstrate a school lockdown. They're going to show, of course, the basic classroom intercom functionality, and finally, what happens in a situation with the panic button and a silent 911 call. And here we go.
Plains Area School District is a suburban school district just to the west of Madison. We're a district of approximately 7,000 students. We're a pre-K through 12 program. We have 10 school facilities and 3 non-school facilities. It presents 2 challenges. One is just a matter of coordination with all these agencies, not just in the planning process, but also in the response aspect. By having a platform like Informacast, it provides a consistent means of communicating and informing regarding an incident to not just our first responders in those multiple agencies, but also to our staff and parents who are in multiple buildings and our students in multiple buildings.
The Informacast is able to tell us where a 911 call is coming from. It pops up, it says 911 and it says the room number. It would alert me as well as several other important staff members in the building.
The pipes had frozen and the custodian had been watching for that. Water just started funneling out and she thought to just go press the button. It's alerted to my phone, to the office phone, to the nurse's phone, to all of our student services phones, our librarian, and kind of central people that can respond right away. We all came, probably literally 10, 15 seconds.
We're notifying key people, our school offices, our transportation department, in the event of the possibility of severe weather. Then when it gets more serious, we have a severe thunderstorm warning or a tornado warning, we're able to instantaneously get that message out. In fact, not just get the message out, but actually initiate a broadcast warning over our public address systems inside and outside of our buildings. Certainly now leveraging Informacast with one button, we're able to then communicate and to notify all of our locations regarding a particular situation.
I like to be not stuck in the office, but I like to be around in teachers' classrooms and sell customized bells for kids outside.
Students outside, please get ready to come inside. We're going to need to bring you in because the weather is bad. Students, please get lined up to come inside. We will have door recess. Thank you.
So I'll set the entire year in advance, and then with any kind of delays or closings, I can do that as well. And it's nice that I can do that from home or from school. So it's a time when I can't come in, and I can also do that from home.
In a lockdown, we're in survival mode, and we're talking about keeping people safe from danger, and to have that ability for those doors to automatically close is very comforting to staff, I think. And to know that when we go into lockdown mode, that doors to specific hallways will close automatically.
Many times parents come early to pick up their students. What I would do is I would dial their extension, and then at that time I'm able to say the teacher's name, and it goes over the intercom. I can also hear if there's chatter in their classroom, so I might be able to tell if they don't answer that they're not in the classroom.
Hello. Hello, Garrett.
I am the receptionist during the lunch hour. I have the lobby alert button on the phone, and I have the 911 button under the desk. It's a real easy button to get at. Makes me feel more comfortable. Since I'm the only one here, I'm the first person they see. Yeah.
We're able to leverage existing infrastructure, you know, our voice over IP phone system with Cisco. Being able to put an application like Informacast on allows us to leverage and really have an effective system with what we feel is a great value, a very reasonable cost.
So that gives you a bit of an overview, a little demonstration. You actually got to see kind of the system and some of the features in operation. A couple of things that I just wanted to point out that may or may not have been clear in that demonstration is, first of all, you did see the integration with the Cisco IP phones. So again, now the secretaries sitting at their desks can answer a call from a classroom, not by having to get up and again walk over to a head-end unit somewhere in the main office. They're able to answer directly from their telephone sitting right there at their desk. So they don't have to move, so they can give a more immediate response. So that's kind of an important thing. And something else, when they went into their emergency lockdown, they didn't really go into a lot of detail, whether they quickly glossed over it. There is a function built in, and actually it's an option that we want to pursue, and that is it would allow all of our staff members to put an application on their cell phone. Most of them will have their cell phone with them, and when the building does go into lockdown, they would get that notification on their cell phone. So immediately the cell phone notifies them. Of course, they're going to hear it throughout the building. The important thing about that notification is that it will ask, are you all right? And they're able to, hopefully, able to respond that, yes, where I'm sheltered, I'm okay, and they're able to respond. If we don't get a response from them, or if they do have an issue, they'd have an option of pressing and saying, no, I need help immediately. So it would, again, give some indication in case of a lockdown, again, where we may have to send the first responders to immediately check out.
That's iOS and Android?
Yes, it is cross-compatible with all platforms.
And it would work over Wi-Fi?
Correct, correct.
So the goal then would be, I mean, obviously not every teacher will have access to do every single thing, but how many in the building, for example, will have access to change the display and things that, you know, announcements that are happening throughout the day? Is that something that will be controlled by principal, or is it just?
Again, initially, we'll start off with the district guidelines, and then some of these things will become more of a building level.
Right.
So the building principals themselves will then say, I would like to have this individual have access to send broadcast messages across our building.
Right.
Versus, you know, of course, at all times, only certain individuals would have the ability to send broadcast messages across the entire district, whether it be audio or text. So that would be more tightly controlled. But we would start off with a basic template for each school, and then we'd customize it for each school. So it's not that it locks, you know, any one school into doing what another school is doing. It's completely customizable by building.
How many suppliers are out there doing this?
There are multiple different companies that are out there that supply the hardware. That's one of the unique items that, again, I showed off some of the hardware that's out there. There are all different types of manufacturers out there, and one of the questions that we were asked when we were doing one of our walkthroughs at Edison was, well, what happens if we miss a location? We have to put a clock in there at a later date and time. It's not a problem. We simply run a network cable like we would do for a wireless access point or for a computer in a lab or something. We'd run a new network cable there, and we simply hang the new device. They plug in. It's pretty much plug and play. They're universal. So it's very, very simple, very easy, the devices.
So Brian, the elementary schools, first will do the wireless upgrades, and then you'll be able to upgrade them with the new clocks and PA systems. So some may get done this summer, some may
Ideally,
not.
what we would like is we'd like to do all the work at the same time. So for example, as part of those network upgrades, each classroom is getting its own Wi-Fi access point in the classroom. At the same time, the vendor is pulling the cable in there. We're going to have them pull the same cable in for the new IP clock intercom device. So they'll be doing that. So they'll be doing kind of double the work over the summer. We're just not sure how quickly we'll get to that. And more importantly, we need to have a sufficient amount of time to train the staff on how to use this. We don't want to open school in September and have staff members not trained on how to use an important communications device like this.
That's a good point.
What we can do is, if the system is not ready to train everyone, have everyone ready to switch over to the new system, we'll keep the old system in place so that they still have the traditional system there as we get them training and we finish off the installation. Most of the work that we'll be doing starting in the next month or so will be after hours. So we do not interrupt instructional time during the day. It'll be done after hours, and we'll see how long it takes. We have a lot of big buildings, Edison, Roosevelt, the high school. Those are our three biggest schools, and it's going to take a long time to run all the cable into every single room that we need to in order to put in these clocks. And at the same time, we have to go back and take down the old clocks then when the old systems come out. So that has to be taken down, the old system taken out, patched up, the walls have to be patched up, painted, things like that. So it's double work. It's not just installing, it's also removal.
How many displays, I mean, I don't hold you to it, but for example, the high school, do you think will there be?
Right now, I couldn't even tell you about the high school, I mean, you're looking at, say, an elementary school, you're looking at one of those LCD displays per classroom. So you have to take, approximate number of classrooms in a school.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to look at all the common spaces such as a library, cafeteria, the gym. Okay, we'll have displays there. And then, of course, in the hallways. And there kind of depends how long the hallways are, okay? Like I said, the acoustics are now different with these sideways mounted speakers because they're broadcasting the audio sideways down the hallway as opposed to kind of bouncing up and down. We have a lot of speakers in our schools right now, and they're close together for that reason because they're in the ceiling, they're just pointing straight down. They're not sending the audio down the hallways as much. So it's kind of hard to give an estimate exactly, but the best way is just kind of look at a building and count the number of classes that we have there, and then probably add about another 10 devices.
Brian, the video showed an individual identifying or initiating the lockdown, said that it could happen from any Cisco phone. So what does that mean for our personal phones?
That's what they demonstrated in the video.
Right.
And again, since the video was made, there have been improvements to the system. So again, whoever you authorized in the building to initiate a lockdown. So again, that's something that has
Just an app that you put on your phone, either
Exactly.
Android or...
Correct. It can be put on
Or
the
Apple.
phone. We can actually put that type of a lockdown or panic button on an actual office telephone. So for example, there at the end of the video, you saw the woman who was the receptionist. She could have a button programmed on her phone that's a panic button. That's the same thing as like a silent 911 call. She would just be pressing that button, and immediately it would alert the police at the same time it's alerting the individuals inside the building that there's an issue.
Does this require, I don't want you to get into the conversation of who's allowed to and what the mechanism is for starting a lockdown identifying situation, but will this require any additional procedural policy statements about who, what, when, and where, and how, and under what circumstances?
So actually, this past December, we had the state of New Jersey, law enforcement from the state of New Jersey, the county, and local Westfield came to 2 of our schools and called lockdown drills so that they could observe and give guidance and feedback to us, and I had let the board know that. And all of our principals participated in it, even if it wasn't their building. And actually, they gave us new guidance as to how lockdowns should be called and can be called. And our district committee that works on emergency management has already been working through that to make sure that everybody, all the staff, gets the information regarding it. So there actually has been change in the guidance regarding
So that would be memorialized in our emergency procedures documents?
Yes, and the training that's provided will be provided later this year.
Okay.
For all staff in all buildings.
Yeah. How, What is the rollout that you anticipate based on not only the physical changes, but then the training?
I think what the minimum that we're shooting for right now is to see that the system is installed and operational for September at the high school and both intermediate schools.
In parallel to the existing system?
We believe that we'll be able to run that system at the beginning of the school year. So again, if we have to run it in parallel, we will. But we would hope that we would be able to, offer the training well in advance so that they would be able to start working with that system in September.
But
And
prior
then-
to the summer?
Correct, because that's why I said we're looking to start putting the cabling here in the next month.
And you said that that was the high school and
Edison and Roosevelt.
the intermediates?
Because they already have the networking infrastructure to
Right.
support this new equipment.
That's
So,
ambitious.
Yes, it's going to be a lot of work, and we'll see. I mean, again, we're not sure yet. Depends how many crews we get in, how far they get. One of the issues that we did encounter when we installed the networking equipment in those schools over the last year or two is that type of construction, those buildings, they have walls they're concrete walls that are like 2 feet thick. So the wiring contractor comes out and says, not a problem, we can run a cable down there. Then all of a sudden they come out and they're trying with these little drills to drill a hole, and they realize, well, they burned out that drill and they just ate up 3 drill bits. So it takes a lot longer to get through some of those walls. So if they encounter any of those issues, fortunately, this is the same wiring contractor that wired all 3 of those schools for our network upgrades. So they're already familiar with the building. So we're hoping that advantage will pay off and that they'll be able to move along a little bit quicker in wiring these schools.
What's the strategy for teaching personal use? Are you going to use trainers to train the rest of them as a turnkey, or?
Trainers, but for the majority of operators, which are the teachers in the classroom,
Yeah.
there will be no change. It's going to be a call button. So literally training at a faculty meeting, a short, that first day back, there's not a lot they really have to learn.
Okay.
It's very quick and easy. There will be a little bit more training for actually the office personnel
Right.
and how to respond and things, because they're not used to the things coming through on their phones. The advantage we have there is those individuals are back sooner than September.
Okay.
So they start sooner so that we could sit down with them. And again, it would not take very long, an hour or two. The majority of training would happen with the building administrators in sitting down, again, if they need to tailor or go learn how to go in and modify the bell schedule and things
Right.
like that. So,
Brian, right now, if there's an emergency in the classroom, the teacher calls down, and then the secretary has to relay that to 911. Is there a way to eventually directly patch that through? And
there would be a way.
And
Okay.
would Westfield Police want that?
The Westfield Police Department has been very good in working with us in all of this. So there would be a way to enable, in a panic situation, that again, the system is set up that it will alert anyone, anywhere that we want it to.
Right.
So again, if we want to go to that point that, again, a panic button is pressed in a classroom, yes, we want to notify the police department. If we don't want it to immediately do that and we still want it to relay through the main office first, we can choose that as well. So the option is there. That's the important thing, is that we're not going to be tied in. We at least have the option that what we decide, best practices that we get from our security consultant and our security committee, and we can choose what we'd like to do.
Excellent.
Hey, Brian, who provides the training for us? Does that come from the vendors, from the product? Do we do that? Do we have to go out and solicit people?
It's a lot easier for us to do it in-house.
Okay.
Again, it's something that, again, if we go out and we have the vendor do it, of course, they're willing to do it, but it's going to cost a little bit more money. I think it's more important than we invest in the actual equipment, putting more devices out there and things like that, than sitting back and paying someone to train, because like I said, the majority of individuals that we're going to have to train in the district are the teachers.
Right.
And really, there's not a lot of difference for them. They just will not have an analog clock up there, and they won't have a regular speaker. Instead, they're going to have this digital system up there on the wall, and they're going to have a call button over there. It's
Right.
pretty much the same. There's not a lot of difference, and that's the majority of our users that we have to train. So to go out and get somebody, we could probably write up as a one-page handout, and it'd be very simple. So I think that's a better use of our funds than paying an outside company to come in to do dedicated training.
Oh, I do too. I just want to make sure, and, I think we probably have the ability to do that. And I don't know how familiar you have to be with the installation of the equipment to know how to use it, but it sounds like you're on top of that.
Yes, it's, like I said, from the majority of the end users, it's going to be a very simple
Great.
system to use.
Anybody else from the board? Any questions from the public? Okay.
There's one.
Oh, sorry. Do you have to, you need to come up and state your name and, sorry, I know. It's
You're in
the
it
old
now.
rigmarole. I need you to state your name and address, please.
Anthony Scaglio, 543 Washington Street. Is there a chance there's going to be integrated video in there?
There's no integrated video in this communication system. The video that we do have in the district is part of our security system that we have. And while this will integrate in some areas, at least it would notify us which video camera to look at. So we would know which video camera in the building is covering that area. Most of our cameras are not covering individual classrooms.
Yeah.
Might as well say all of them. We don't have any cameras in classrooms.
Just then you could immediately see what's going on and get a better idea. That's all I wanted to ask.
Correct.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Nothing further? Great. I'd like to ask the board to approve the minutes of our board meeting held on February 2nd, 2016, February 6th, 2016, and the private minutes from February 2nd, 2016. Can I have a second? Ginny, thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed or abstentions?
I'll abstain,
Oh.
since I wasn't here for the meeting.
All right, thank you. Personnel, Mark.
I'd like the board to consider personnel items 1 through 26. Numbers 23 through 26 were at your table as addendums. And also, just to note, there's a change on number 6. The position that we're addressing here is, in fact, the Westfield High School assistant principal in an interim role.
Second.
Second, thank you, Mitch. Any questions? Dana? please.
Mark Friedman,
Yes?
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Chris Langhart.
Yes.
Ginny Lights,
Yes.
Gretchen Olick.
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Charles Ostroff.
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes.
Nothing else?
Nothing else, then we will move on to facilities report. Brendan?
Yes. Facilities Committee met on February 5th. We discussed the bond and how we're going to roll out some of those changes as early as this month, and how boilers will be phased in over the next couple of years as time and planning allow. We also heard a presentation from the Friends of Westfield Track. They've requested permission to, at their own expense, renovate the concession stand at Kaler Field. They'll be replacing the cabinets with some stainless steel shelving and other upgrades to make it more modern. Cost the district $0, and they will roll it out as quickly as possible in phases.
That's great.
And then we also discussed the lights at Kaler Field, and Mr. Franks will be making a presentation on that.
Okay. Can I ask a question about the concession stand? Mike, are your guys gonna have to do the work, or they're doing it all?
We're doing everything. What we're gonna do is we're going to just tear out this old stuff in there and then just bring this new stuff in.
Excellent.
Get rid of the old stuff.
That's great.
Yeah, it is great that they're going to just step up and help
Friends
us.
of Westfield Track?
Yes, thank you. Okay, Peter, do you want?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Question before that. When it comes to work like that being done by an entity other than the school district itself, are proper and appropriate procurement procedures in place and all the bidding laws and prevailing wage and things of that sort part of
In
the
this
process?
instance, well, we're not paying for it. It doesn't come through us at all.
But is it a district-owned facility?
District owns a facility, but we're not paying for it, and it's well below the bid limit. So if it had been something over the bid limit or whatever, then we would require that the funds come to the district and we then go through the procedure. But this is minor expenses that are well below the bid limit, and they will pay directly.
Anything else before we move on to the Westfield Soccer Association presentation? Okay. Peter, if you want to come on up.
Good evening. My name is Peter Franks. I represent the Westfield Soccer Association. I live at 518 Clark Street, Westfield, New Jersey. And before I begin, I will be a $10 bid for up to 10 of those clocks that they remove, because they got to be classics.
Maybe.
Maybe you get some money back.
Potential source of revenue.
I'll try to be brief. I came before you last year with a proposal for lights at Keller, temporary lights, which you approved after much public discussion, and I'm sure a lot of discussion amongst yourselves. Unfortunately, and I think we knew this last year, nothing's changed this year to give me another outlet other than to come to you again and ask for temporary lights. However, we spent 10 weeks last year learning about what it was, what it looked like, what we could do better. There was a meeting with some of the public in July between the Facilities Committee, myself, and other folks. And I think in September 29th, Mr. Matesich, as a president of the BOE and the Facilities Committee, made a public presentation on the recommendations. So I come to you tonight asking you for another proposal based upon those recommendations with, I think, all the bullet points that I needed to work on this year to present to you. So with that, I put on your tables. I didn't make everything available for the public. I can make a copy for you if you wish. Pardon me, my proposal, which I made on November 5th through Dana, full 17 weeks ahead of schedule. I gave you a copy of the placement of the lights this year. One of the recommendations was that there be fewer lights or fewer generators. This year, 3 instead of 4, reducing, again, the noise. This year, placing them onto the field in the margins between the field sport line and the track. Again, bringing them some 40 to 50 feet closer to the field. Raising the height of the tower with the illumination pointing further down onto the field, relatively on the field to begin with additional shielding, which was recommended on the September 29th report. Metal shields around the top 2 lights, and if needed, additional shielding on the bottom 2 lights, if they're needed at all in this scenario. Don't know yet. I was also required to show you a demo of that, which I did on February 2nd, I believe. Again, postponed a little bit because of the blizzard. So we're here tonight on the 16th and going to March 1st instead of 2 to 16. So timing of that is just a little bit different. I was also required to provide a code of conduct that we used last year, which was proven to be very, very effective, to Mike Morris and to you, the Board of Ed, where we showed how we dropped off, how we picked up, how we got the kids across the street, how we didn't have any accidents, how we didn't have anybody waiting, how we found throughout all that time that there were many, 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 many more users at the field, including the high school itself. And some of those recommendations that we put in and some of the stipulations that we put in, I think will help Mike and you guys put that on other users and even your own kids as well, to be safe, secure, crossing, dropping off, picking up, etc. Again, I gave you a picture of the light. I also included the copy of the insurance documentation, which you've had for years. WSA is insured to use your field. Those units are also insured. I was also required to provide, like I did last year, a means to communicate to WSA and to the Board of Ed any complaints that we could work on, mitigate, try to work with, which I think we did very well last year. So upon approval, I'll have a Google Doc phone and a Google Doc email. Anybody can email me directly through that, not my home number. A lot of it came to you guys as a board last year. I'm sorry for that. But it was communicated to me immediately that night. And usually there was a representative of the Board of Ed, certainly the WSA, myself included, to go check out these complaints as they came in, if they were, and we did what we could do. So in the actual proposal, presented to you guys on November 4th by email, the lighting, again, the same units, however 3, with better shielding, placed in a better space on the field to mitigate light shining into other people's homes and to mitigate the noise, particularly in the northwest corner where the Laura and Alex Velasilich live, in the blue house. The noise will be lessened, of course, because the lights are closer and there's only 3 generators. I did look into getting 1 generator running cables. It's not really feasible. It's really, really cost prohibitive, and it's unsafe because the cables would have to come across the track or above the track and carry electricity. not a good idea. Hours of use, and one of the other stipulations was, a pro and con on, could I do 5 nights for 1 hour versus 3 nights for 2 hours? Hours of use, I still need to ask that I go directly after the high school use, which is around 7 to 7:15, and go to 9:30. Last year, the lights were off every night at 9:32 p.m. It's not very late, but in order to run the practices, they're already shortened. It doesn't become cost effective or time effective to run for an hour and then shut them down. It really, because I can't get on there, and as time goes on, the sun sets later, the high school is there longer, we wait a little bit longer, so we need to go to that 9:30 period.
But, I'm sorry, Pete, just to interrupt you, 5 day, are you requesting 5 days?
No, I only requested 3.
Okay.
Last year I did request 5 days, if other users could use them if they needed to try to be that to other people. I mean, I put in my request to the Board of Ed to use the field the same 3 nights I did last year. If you allow 5 nights and the other users deem that the lights would be good for them, that's up to you guys to decide. They're not here tonight. I got to speak for ourselves.
Remind me of the days. I didn't see that.
Monday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Okay.
After high school use till 9:30. And I had put that request in a while ago, the typical request that we would do every year. And I have it in my envelope, but Sandy and Emily had approved that with or without lights. The light part is up to you guys, obviously. Weeks of use, March 1st to April 30th. Last year I asked for mid-May. Recommendation was to just go to April 30th because as it gets warmer, folks open up their windows, they want to be outside and recreate. I get it. We'll go to April 30th. We may or may not take off the week, Easter week like we did last year, but we'll try to do what we can do. There'll be no games, there'll be no whistles, there'll be no loud coaching, there'll be a monitor. Hopefully it's not me every night. But we'll have somebody down there responsible from the WSA board and or a coach, a parent coach, not just a professional coach who will work just as hard as we will, but maybe not with the same interest. And then the last point I gave to you in my proposal was the legality, as was determined last year in Mountainside Municipal Court. The use of generators was perfectly legal, and we act in good faith to replicate our actions from last year at a minimum and continue to try to create an even better environment to the user and the neighborhood. So, again, that's the request. It's the same as last year, and I'll make the adjustments as recommended in the September 29th meeting to the Board of Ed and the public. I think the last thing, and something that's important to me, is that through us being there last year for the 10 weeks, 3 nights a week, and I was down there 5 nights a week, quite frankly, we found that you had many more users than you may, as a board, may have known about. Emily and the facilities committee may have known because they get the applications for use, but some of the things that we had seen, and Mr. Matessers had mentioned that September 29th meeting in his recommendations, which I did not, you already have a copy of that from last year, whether there's many things going on down there. And I think that by us being there last year and being so sensitive to the needs of the public and to our own needs, we were able to identify areas where we could help. And again, as you mentioned, you wanted to have our code of conduct because it works so well. But insurance stocks, what they're doing, who they are they documented? Yeah, yes, the public is down there, and that's fine. You know, you got the Serpentine, which is never locked. You can use the track. There's a bathroom placed in there, a portable bathroom placed in there because of the traffic that's down there. I did see kids working out on their own, hitting that big tire with the sledgehammer that some of the families were, aghast about. And I said, well, I'm here now. Let's move them over here. So we can move those tires away from the homes. A lot of things that we saw, we reported back to you, which was documented in the September 29th meeting that you guys can work on, and we're down there again to monitor. So, listen, we're not the Keller police, but we're down there. We're trying to run a good program. We need the facility. This year there's no alternative. Hopefully next year there could be. And that could be is also a benefit to the high schools. We're talking about that in the town. But we are down there. We are monitoring. We are asking folks to abide by the same code of conduct that we abide by and have abided by. And we were accused of certain things last year that just weren't true, as far as parking, dropping off, picking up, things like that. It didn't happen, and I think at the demonstration this year, you saw that the lights, those of you who were there, and those of you who maybe see, I sent Brendan a video or a short video, right? I don't know if you shared that, but the shielding works, and the more time I have to work with it, I can make it work better and better and better, not worse or worse, but it works. It brings the lights right down onto the field. It takes them off the horizontal so they're not shining out to the neighborhood. And I'm asking for the opportunity to try again and show you who I am. We are who we are, and we'll be down there to do it and take care of it and answer to your questions. Always knowing that if you don't like it, you can stop it. So that's the proposal.
The shielding would be on all three of the lights?
Yep.
And so, Brendan, can you just, as chair of the facilities committee, I know you were down there, you saw that, just can you offer us some insight into whether you think the shielding was effective?
So last year, the way the lighting was set up was in the 4 extreme corners of the field, just for a general layout, and they were pointing out and a wide field to try and cover as much field area as possible. This year, we have Soccer Association will have 3 lights, one at the 20-yard line, one at the adjacent 20-yard line, and then at the 50-yard line next to the field house.
Right.
They'll be taller and pointed down at the field with shielding on the sides to prevent spillage into the neighborhood. What we saw during the setup during the display for us was clear lines of shadow on the field when the lights were turned on, with no light spilling into adjoining houses. Got a couple pictures from people in the neighborhood. I walked around myself and saw a vast improvement over last year. We've also talked about if the third light facing from the field house out towards the playground at Lincoln is a problem, moving it to the same side of the field, so you'd have 3 lights at the 20, 50, 20, all on the Lincoln side of the field, shining out to the field house and Edison School.
And into Addison instead of residential areas.
Exactly.
Which is where 2 of them are currently.
Right.
Okay.
That's not the ideal situation for the Soccer Association, but it's something they're willing to look into to see if it can work for their needs.
And to Brendan's point, a work in progress. I think I would love to try 20/20/50 coming back, because that light coming back towards Lincoln would then be placed centrally on the field, which would be facing, well, first of all, it wouldn't be facing the homes because it'll have the shield coming down. It'll be on a diagonal down.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be, the bleacher would be there and the mesh would be up, as opposed to where it was last year on the far side over by Edison, that corner.
Right.
And went over the playground fence where I had mesh there to block the driveway view of one of the residents, but I couldn't make it higher because the fence wasn't that high. But now I'll have a grandstand there, the bleachers. That would be ideal, but I think it could be, if need be, we can move them around. Having them on the field up and down is paramount.
And there's no safety concerns or concerns to damaging the turf with bringing them in across the track and bringing them in?
That was one of the first questions I asked. Not only to damage the turf, but concern that because the turf is a safe material, it's a little soft. I was worried about in a wind the light tower tipping over if the ground shifted a little bit. From both the turf manufacturer and the lighting manufacturer, both are completely safe.
That was the first question I asked too. It's level ground. The outriggers that are on there to stabilize it don't really even need to have pressure on the turf because it is level. Last year I had them in the mud, and I had to jack one up, level it off this way, level it off that way, and even through the thaw process, there was no movement. But on the turf it would be even better. The turf is actually, if you don't know this, it's 2.5 feet thick. It's got sand, gravel, sand, gravel, sand. I watched them build it.
Right.
It's really unique.
The outriggers are more for high wind situations, but we set parameters for when they would have to shut that down anyway.
I just want to say, I'm sorry, Jenny. Last year, at the end of the pilot program, Rich gave that pretty thorough presentation about what our findings were. So and how we would entertain another application to do the program again if certain conditions were met. So I think, I haven't seen the facilities presentation. I think we could all feel comforted on the board that they have met all that criteria that we laid out after the pilot program last year. So we put that right on the record, right, that they complied with
Yeah,
everything.
I think
We wouldn't
so.
be here tonight if they didn't.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. I just want to make that clear. That's why we're entertaining this application again.
And I just want to make clear to the public, the purpose of tonight is to just gather information, to give y'all an opportunity to ask questions and gather information as well. We're not voting tonight, we're voting at our March 1st meeting. At that point, Brendan, as chair of the facilities committee, will be making a formal recommendation to the board. So I know it sounds like we're in decision mode, but we're not. This is an opportunity for us and for you to ask questions of Peter and for us to just gather more information. So, but yes, I think the answer is, Rich and the Facilities Committee had set forth some very clear guidelines in terms of we're only willing to entertain this again as a board if these items are addressed. And this is, and Peter's proposal seems to address all those. Yeah, so go ahead.
Oh, thank you. And Peter, I just, on the rec committee, I know you had applied for a field space at Tamaqua too, and I think that was all contingent upon the board's decision first here about what will be granted, if anything, to you. I don't know where that stands. I don't know if you have an update.
I don't have an update on that.
Okay.
I was kind of thought that in October when I met with them that it would be a no-brainer, we'll get you some space, which would mean I could, leave you guys alone come April 1st and move
Right.
my merry band of travel soccer players. I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
Okay.
I don't know if it's going to happen with lights. I don't know. I rely on the facility that I know that I've been working with at this point. I hope that does happen, and I can work with you guys at that point in time. I just don't know.
Right.
I've asked. I ask every day.
And I just want to make note that I looked at the light placement, and it looks like you have two facing Rahway, which is where I was out there with you a couple times. I don't think we had any complaints from that direction. It was all going the other way.
Right.
And I see the shielding now, and I'm hopeful that will
Right.
minimize
Well, dual
that.
shielding, the actual shielding on the
Yes.
lights itself, and the fact that it's on the turf, and the
Right.
fact that I could raise it and point it, even without shielding, I think would be a benefit. But with the shielding, it's even more. And then thirdly, the stadium. The bleachers are in the way now, instead of where they were over in the corners.
Do we still have the screening up on the fencing, or do we not
Oh,
need
we
that?
did, but it was ripped down.
It was ripped down.
But it's going back. Your
But, oh, I have
proposal
more.
would
I have
be
more.
to
I
reinstall,
have more.
right?
Yeah, no, the mesh that was on the playground fence was tampered with.
Yeah, I saw it was ripped up a bit when I was there one
The
time.
mesh that was on the bleachers I took down anyway, because I didn't want it up
Okay.
all year. And the mesh that's on the south, is that south? Yeah, the south side of the field, or beyond the field over by the fencing that faces down towards Grove Street, that's still up.
Okay.
And fine. I might add that I would think that we'd add screening to the Broadway Avenue fence, just because it would look better.
To the road. Oh, okay.
It would look better. You can make the place look better with green mesh. It
Right.
it looks like spring, but
Okay.
yeah.
All right,
It's
thanks.
not overly expensive. It's not inexpensive.
Mhm.
You don't want to have it be destroyed, but it's not a killer in the budget.
Got it.
Peter, when the Facilities Committee members went over to see your new shielding lights, we talked about the fact that the new placement of the units would be on the interior portion of the field right next to the track.
Mhm.
And you talked about how you would protect track runners from getting involved with or tripping over the lighting. You want to talk about that for a minute, please?
Well, hopefully they stay on the track first. Yeah, but the outriggers would come near the unit would be 3 or 4 feet away from the track, surrounded by hay bales. The outrigger would be a little bit closer to the track with 2 hay bales and 1 hay bale on top. That if a runner were to run off the track and hit that, they'd hit hay. They jump over hurdles. They're not going to,
I understand.
it's lower than a hurdle. I mean, I get that part, but it's not a danger. If they're gonna run off the track, they could hit the fence or they could hit the hay bales. They'd probably rather hit the hay bales.
And that'll also help reduce noise, some
Yeah, sure.
some noise containment.
Yeah, some noise containment.
You're talking about going higher, but we're still within the code.
You don't really have any code on that, to my knowledge,
Is that
after,
right?
after meeting the town, but it would be about 22 feet. It was
And-
15 feet last year.
And they're gonna be cranked. I know that was something else that came up last year, the noise from the
Right.
cranking of the up and the down.
The
But they're
cranking,
still going
the
up and down
the
every
cranking
night.
up is where it makes noise, and that would happen when the high school's using it for the first 2 weeks at around 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon. When the high school's not using it, it's, now the sun is out and they're done, and I come down there, it's the crank up. So it's, yeah, it's 15 cranks at 7:15 PM. Coming down makes no noise, so at 9:30 at night, when you're cranking back down to be in a little safer position, there's no noise coming down. It's neutral. Less than neutral, it's 0.
Anyone else from the board have any other questions for Frank or Brendan?
How many kids are we talking about, Peter?
Last year, we had, I'll call it we had 3 teams, 3 nights a week per session, 2 nights per session. So what's that, I'm sorry.
I think it's in that proposal.
It was about 500 kids combined, 500 kid hours, not hours, but 500 kids total. And the reciprocity of that is that we didn't have to triple up at Oleander Fay
Right.
in the time that we do have, as minimal as it is. We didn't have to triple them up down there. We put 2 and 2, or, you know, last year, we threw some kids in that corner, that corner, that corner, that corner, gave them smaller space. Listen, I think with the new lighting scenario, it will be better light. I think it'll be better light if lacrosse thinks that they can use it now, because it'll be higher and domed. I think it will be easier for the eyes, for most people. It's not game ready, which is not on the cards anyway. We don't want it to be game ready. But the practice environment would be better. And last year's environment, as I said to a number of the coaches and the players, it's not the greatest scenario, but it's better than no practice. Because if they weren't doing this, they would not be practicing.
Right.
We don't have the space, and we don't have access to the space. The space that we do have access to, that we rent outside the district, or in our terminology, outside the town, we can't get enough of that either, and it's expensive. So, as is this proposal for us, but not for you.
So I'd like to open it up if anybody from the community wants to come up, ask questions, make comments. Now would be a great time. Just state your name and address.
Greg Casco, 434 Everson Place. Before I start, I'd like to thank the Board of Education for entertaining the Friends of Westfield Track and their plans to renovate the concession stand. I am president of that organization, former alumni and track athlete under Coach Hornish, Coach Clarkson, Coach Martin. So once again, thank you. And it does come at no cost to the district.
Thank
I
you.
can assure you that. I wrote what I wanted to say tonight, so I didn't get off track. I'll try to be as fast as I can. I lived in Westfield for approximately 44 years. I'm very familiar with the usage of Kaler Stadium over those years. When I purchased my own home on Everson Place 22 years ago, I knew there was a football field in the neighborhood. I knew I could expect at least 4 to 5 home football games on Saturdays during the fall season. I knew that there'd be a few track meets, maybe a championship soccer or lacrosse game played at Kaler Stadium. I had no issue with this, as I am an avid Westfield High School sports fan, having participated in high school sports programs in Westfield at the high school, along with my brother and sister. When the Board of Education had the artificial turf installed at Kaler Stadium, the neighborhood was concerned about the increase in the use of the facility. We were assured back then that only a few extra games would be played, including men's and women's soccer, men's and women's lacrosse, and field hockey. The use of the field has steadily increased over the years, that just about every home soccer, lacrosse, and field hockey game is now played at Kaler Stadium. Each of these teams is funded by the Board of Education, and they have every right to use the Board of Education field. I support this. For the past 22 years, as I've owned my home in Westfield, I've paid my share of property taxes, of which this year, 62% of my taxes went to the Board of Education. However, I also pay an additional tax, or what the school board has called a participation fee, for my two daughters to participate in school sports and also drama productions. At one point, I paid an extra amount to support families that could not afford a participation fee for their children. I was a student athlete that attended Roosevelt and Westfield High School. My parents never had to pay for uniforms, participation fees, or any other costs associated with being a member of a school-sanctioned team. That has changed. With one daughter having graduated from Westfield High School last year and another daughter that is a junior, I've had to pay for all my daughters, or both my daughters, to participate. These fees offset Board of Education expenses. One expense of the Board of Education is the maintenance of school property. I've also absorbed the costs associated with bond referendums that have passed to maintain or upgrade Board of Education facilities. I'm now being asked to underwrite the Westfield Soccer Association's need for field time because they don't want to pay to play on fields in other towns, citing the inconvenience it places on parents that have to drive their kids to practice, the expense of rental fees, among other reasons. May I remind you, the Westfield Soccer Association has nothing to do with the Westfield Recreation Department, a department that oversees youth sports and facilities run by the town of Westfield, of which my tax dollars also help fund. The Westfield Soccer Association has nothing to do with the town of Westfield. The Westfield Soccer Association is a money-making machine with paid coaches and paid trainers. They have outgrown the available field time they have been allotted on Westfield Recreation Department fields, and once again are turning to the Board of Education to solve their problem for free. Perhaps they need to consider reducing the number of teams and participants to reduce its need for additional field space, or look elsewhere for training time on fields that they pay for with their own money and not the money of the Westfield taxpayers. The Westfield Board of Education and the taxpayers of Westfield should not be the WSA's benefactor. Last year, Peter Franks of the WSA misled this Board of Education when he told you that the Westfield High School sports teams, athletes, and teams would benefit from the lighting of Kaler Stadium. He even paraded Westfield High School Athletic Director Sandy Mamery to the microphone at a board meeting to echo this claim. We now know this to be false. Now, one Westfield High School team benefited from the temporary lights that the WSA placed at Kaler Stadium last year. In fact, I asked the coaches of two spring season high school sports teams if their teams utilized the lights for practice, and they both said no. Also, my neighbor's daughter had even remarked that the lights were useless because of the poor lighting the portable lights provided. She plays for the WSA. The fact is, these high school coaches and athletes have families to go home to at night, and they also recognize that they have other commitments in the evening hours, and the best time to schedule practice is right after school, which has been traditionally the case with every high school sports team. Peter Franks also claimed that last year's lighting pilot was a joint request with the Westfield Lacrosse Association. We now know that the dimly lit field was a hazard and a danger to lacrosse players passing a lacrosse ball at that velocity. Perhaps the Lacrosse League realized they couldn't use the field under such dangerous conditions. Perhaps that's why they're not asking for 5 nights this year, they're only asking for 3. Once again, the Westfield Soccer Association does not represent the town of Westfield. If you have decided to allow, or if you decide to allow the WSA to light Kaler Stadium again this year, albeit temporary, what rental fees will you be charging to offset the wear and tear of the facility and to offset the inconvenience to the neighborhood with nighttime activities at the field that has proven to be disruptive to Kaler Stadium neighbors? When Peter Franks of the WSA and former board president Richard Matesich, a past chairman of the Facilities Committee, claimed the wear and tear at Kaler Field due to usage by the WSA is minimal, they weren't writing a check to the town of Westfield to pay for mine or anybody else's property taxes, taxes that will one day soon be needed to replace Kaler Stadium's synthetic turf field. The Westfield Soccer Association, advertising themselves as a nonprofit organization, is simply a legal status set by the state and has nothing to do with their income. Please don't let the term nonprofit make it sound like they are in need and without the monetary resources to pay for those needs. The Westfield Soccer Association has enriched other coffers in other towns for renting their fields. Why shouldn't they be paying this Board of Education? In closing, may I remind you that the Westfield Soccer Association paid for your attorney's representation to defend against town code summonses I filed last year against this Board of Education when you approved the lighting pilot. When Mountainside Judge DeRose rendered his decision to dismiss all three summonses, he did so by painting with a broad brush. What I mean by that is while the Board of Health conducted a test of one generator and concluded that the results were within an allowable decibel level for the neighborhood, allowing Judge DeRose to dismiss that summons issued for that offense, he blanketed the two other summonses I issued with his decision. Those two other summonses were for violating town code on the height of the lights. They were supposed to be no higher than 15 feet. And a summons for violating town code on the shielding of lights. The judge also stated that he wasn't sure the Westfield Board of Education was the correct entity or defendant in the case, and perhaps the WSA should have been. I can assure you that if the WSA uses temporary lights and they are above town code, or they are in violation of any other town code, we're going to be in court again. And it won't be for the use of a generator, which was protected. With regards to the illumination or shielding of the lights, I will read verbatim what is written in the town code. Maximum illumination level at property line. The level of illumination at ground level shall not exceed 5/10 of a foot candle at the property line, nor 3/10 of a foot candle at any property line abutting a property used or zoned for residential use. What I'd like to know is, has the WSA provided an engineer's report, an engineer's lighting plan to this Board of Education, stipulating the height of the portable lights and the level of illumination affecting neighboring properties at that height? They did not do it last year, and they should be required to do this year before you proceed with a decision. What I did when Peter Franks was speaking earlier, I jotted down a few notes that I'd like to address before I finish. He said that I guess he had submitted a proposal with bullet points. Hopefully I can get a copy of that. He said nothing has changed this year with the proposal, but yet when he went through some of his highlights, there are things that changed. He's raising the height of the tower to what height? I believe it's 22 feet. That's 7 feet above town code, as I understand it to be. I could be wrong. He said there's additional shielding. He quoted it as saying better shielding. I'd like to know what better shielding is. I'm currently an engineering inspector. I'm familiar with studies that are done as far as illumination, and we go based on an engineer's takeoff on it, not somebody that says there's better shielding. He said the field was utilized by the high school. I'd like to know what teams used it, because as far as I know, there were no organized Westfield high school teams using that field during the nighttime hours where they needed lights. He said hours of use 7 to 9:30 p.m. It's cost effective to run practice, or it's not cost effective to run practice for an hour. May I remind this board that you're not in the business of alleviating the WSA's financial burden of scheduling and running practices. I had highlighted it before. Last year they requested 5 nights. I believe that was because of the Lacrosse Association. They wanted to partner with the WSA to use this field, and for whatever reason they weren't using it, or they deemed that the practices that they wanted to run, like I said, may have been unsafe. Any of you that have handled a lacrosse ball, it's a very heavy ball. You get hit with one of those things, it hurts. Under the conditions of those dimly lit field, I think it'd be a danger. He also said there were many, many more users. They are there at night regardless. Whether there's lights or not, people use the track. They run around it, they do their exercises. I've seen kids late at night kicking soccer balls, throwing footballs around at night. So what you're doing actually by putting lights in temporarily, you're attracting more people. He said there is no alternative. I disagree with that. There is. There's an alternative of renting space elsewhere outside of town if they need to. My wife right now is in Summit with my daughter. She plays on a travel volleyball team to better her skills so that she can continue to play varsity at the high school level. She drives to Flemington. She drives to Linden. She drives to Summit. They rent these gyms, and I pay out of my wallet money to afford her the time so that she can practice with her team. Once again, the WSA is a money-making machine. They have the money. They spent it to represent this board last year with your attorney when we were in court in Mountainside. I think they should look for other alternatives. I do not support the lighting of Kaler Field. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
Yeah, Greg Lemberg, 528 Grove Street in Westfield. I really just wanted to cover a couple of points that I heard and a couple of things that were in the Facilities Committee report that weren't addressed tonight. I was hoping just to get maybe an update on those. I do feel that the ending time being still 9:30 is quite late. I know Peter has said that, you know, they've tried to minimize the impact to the neighborhood, codes of conduct, all that stuff, but like it or not, it's, you know, 30, 40 kids plus coaches on a field, and the noise level just from the players and the coaches does get quite loud, certainly loud enough to be heard in the adjoining houses to the field. And, you know, I would really like the board and Peter to consider, even I would sooner go to 5 nights a week and finish at 8:15 than going, you know, 3 nights a week till 9:30. I think it gets to the point where it's just too loud, too late at night. That's my view based on the experiences that we had last year. In terms of light spillage, I know the new lights are shielded. I was over at the field briefly when the test was going on, but I was observing from my home and along Rahway. Based on some photographs that we had from last year, the glare from the light tower itself was very, very similar with this new light. I sent Brendan pictures. To me, the amount of glare from the light heads was really maybe very slightly reduced, but fundamentally it was the same level. And light spillage, it's impossible to really assess until all 3 lights are in place. It was 1 light in the furthest position away from my home, so once the 3 lights are in place, it may paint a different picture. As far as some of the other things that maybe weren't addressed tonight, there was discussion in the committee's recommendations last year that additional plantings be made along the perimeter of the fence. I don't know if any forward action has been taken on that. Certainly I haven't seen anything done. I realize that costs money, but it was something that was recommended. And then there was mention of mesh light, the mesh being, you know, reinstalled or augmented. The issue with mesh, at least for the people on Grove Street, is that the fence itself is not sufficiently high. So the head of the lighting tower itself is well above the fence line. So the line of sight from that light head to our backyards is a straight shot, and any screening that gets put up along the 8-foot chain link fence is insufficient to have any impact whatsoever. And in fact, the lighting, at least last year, it kind of reflected through that mesh, and the mesh almost was like glowing. It was sort of lit up from the lighting tower. So it was actually, in some respects, more of a distraction than it was a benefit. And then I think the final thing was with regard to restricting or limiting the use of the PA system. I know it was recommended that Sandy talk to all the people, the users of the field. I know that does not affect the WSA proposal. But again, based on our experience come the fall season, there was still, I would say, quite extensive use of the PA system by non-Westfield High School events, one of which prompted me to go over to the booth, which I hate doing, and knocking on the door and finally getting let in and saying, guys, you're just way too loud. You may not realize it, but I'm inside my house trying to concentrate
on an activity that I was doing, and it was just impossible. And I'm pretty resistant when it comes to noise sensitivity, but this was hours and hours and hours. And I did write to Sandy. I know she, at least I thought I saw in a follow-up communication that she did address with that particular user. But it is still, in my view, at least, an issue that needs further attention.
This is not part of this proposal. This is just a general condition of the field that's been bothersome.
That's been cited, as well
Right.
as it was reported in, the Facilities Committee report back in September. So those were some points that, the last two in particular, the plantings and the PA system were both cited, but they weren't really addressed here. And I don't know if there's an update available tonight.
Yeah,
Or,
I mean, I think I can jump in certainly to the extent that I don't have full information, but I know that the issue with the plantings, it is an ongoing conversation, is trying to find both an appropriate plant and a way to water them when they're first planted so that they grow and live. And so it's kind of an ongoing investigation, conversation that we've had. I'll certainly make sure that it continues. That was my last memory.
Yeah, when the field was turfed in 2005, the existing sprinkler system for the football field and incidentally the surrounding grass was disconnected, which is why shortly after the turf field was put in, the plant started to die off.
yeah, that's actually not the whole story, so I didn't know
Well, yeah,
that.
we know about the walnut tree.
Yeah. That's actually no pun intended, the root cause of the issue.
Right.
So it's not so much about whether the plants are watered after they're recently planted. It's more about the walnuts. I can tell you for sure, based on just what does and doesn't grow in my yard, because I don't have the trees in my yard, but they're right on the property line adjacent on both my neighbors' properties, and they overhang into the Keller field. The guy next door to me has planted some sort of, I believe it's cypress, right up to where these trees are. They're growing just fine. So it's about selecting the right plant and then planting it. And maybe within the first month or two, they need to have a little more TLC. But once that happens and the roots start to establish, they'll be fine. So rather than debate it, I'd like to see, I don't know if you've had a consultant, do you have any landscapers or people who actually know something about trees? I didn't know about this myself. My neighbor did, because he had experiences with these trees. So I would just encourage that get looked into further with some expert opinion.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Brendan, to the extent that Mr. Lemberg shared pictures with you, can you
Absolutely.
share them with the whole board so that
Absolutely.
we have access to them?
May I retort?
I think that, look,
just on
I
two
think, just, right,
Just on 2
I'm not
points.
sure that I would agree with your characterization of what the judge's decision was in the lawsuit. Should you seek to go back to court, we'll have to deal with that then.
Use the word lawsuit, it wasn't a lawsuit. It was-
Okay, with the decision, then, I think it's unfortunate to the extent that once that happens, it shuts down all communication between the board and the community in terms of trying to rectify everything. So that was an unfortunate result of last year. I think also that I don't think that any of us would dispute that because of the timing of the process last year, that the use of the lights did not benefit any of our school teams. I don't think it was, nobody's trying to hoodwink anybody. It just was a factor of the timing and the fact that we put the decision off for a number of weeks, such that when the decision and the lights were finally put up, it wasn't necessary at 4:15, 4:30, or whatever the time was in the afternoon. But if you want to respond further.
You covered two
then-
things. The third point is that the WSA is not a money-making operation, and we do employ professional trainers that the families do pay for. And that also helps us utilize that time between 3:30 and 6:30 at night, where parents can't be home to coach, parent coaches, whatnot. Those parent coaches take over on the weekends. But because we have professionals working with the kids between 3:30 and 6:30, we are out of a lot of people's hair
even our own, because there's so many kids in the fall for sure. So that, unlike other sports organizations that it's all parent-run, they have to wait until 6:30 at night to get home to have those practices. So come springtime, when there's a crunch of teams, not teams, sports, baseball, soccer, lacrosse, other things, the folks that don't use professional trainers all have to start at 6:30 and go on, and we get a lot of it out of the way between 3:30 and 6:30. That's why we have quote-unquote professional trainers, but needless to say, we're not a money-making operation. I don't get paid. None of our board gets paid. None of our volunteers get paid, and there are literally thousands of volunteers for those kids. For every kid almost, there's a volunteer. Let's not mistake that at all. That was brought up in Mountainside last year by a lawyer, saying that we're a money-making operation, we're a for-profit entity. Not true. I won't stand by that. I don't want to hear it. We're volunteers.
I have one more question for you. But remind us again, you mentioned that there were roughly 500 kids that would benefit. Of the 500 kids, how many of them are not Westfield residents?
Last year, we had 5 or 6 kids that were not Westfield residents.
So the balance are?
Yeah, but, I mean, out of the entire Westfield population, 0.002% are not Westfield kids. Some of them are on FC teams, as you know. Some of them are children of staff in town, and they.
No, I'm really more referring to the FC teams.
Yep, no, there was one FC team down there. The rest were travel.
Good,
And
thank you.
purposely.
Sure, yeah, I need you to come back up. Thank you.
What's an FC team?
It's a higher level of travel.
A select?
Yeah, premier team.
With all due respect to the Mountainside court system, or court systems in general, I could not control the slow pace at which those summonses were heard. As a result of a conflict of interest here in Westfield, it got transferred to Mountainside. So I was at the mercy of the court as far as when they could be heard. In addressing Mr. Frank's assertion that an attorney had said that they were a for-profit organization, I believe the attorney he's referring to is John Blake. He never did say that they were a money-making for-profit organization. What he did say was that they were a nonprofit, and they're a nonprofit basically because they don't have shareholders. People don't make money with the WSA, but they do pay their coaches, they do pay their trainers, they do charge participants a fee to be part of the WSA. That's what that attorney meant. I had one other question. Does the WSA pay for usage of Sid Fay Field?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, every person in town pays a user fee. On a sports team.
I understand every team that uses, or every sports team, because I had spoken to Bruce Kaufman about it. I just wanted to hear it from the WSA that you're paying for field usage in Westfield.
We pay a user fee to the town for all of our participants.
And that's why I think that this,
Is that the question?
that's why I think this
Is that the
Board of
question?
Education should consider a fee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. We'll move forward. Brendan, anything further from facilities? You'll share with us what you've gotten independently, and then,
Yes, I'll compile everything I have. I was hoping to get the minutes out before the meeting tonight. That didn't happen. They'll go out later tonight. Our next meeting is on March 4th.
March 1st.
We're voting on this on March 1st, right?
March
No,
1st.
next facilities.
Oh, your
meeting
next facilities meeting. I'm
is
sorry.
after our next meeting
Yeah.
Got
as a
it.
board.
You good moving on?
Yes.
Okay. Ginny, long-range planning.
Yeah, I just want to make a note that the board met with probably 36, I believe, or so, about 3 dozen people of the community, called our planning council to initiate our strategic planning day on February 6th. We had a very productive and creative time together from 8:30 to about 3 o'clock, 2:45, and we'll be meeting again on March 19th, where we'll be receiving information that was compiled from our time together and move forward with some directives for our strategic plan goals. And other than that, no other report.
Thank you. Policies, Chris.
Yeah, no policies for introduction or second reading tonight. The Policies Committee will meet again next Tuesday. For tonight, I would just ask the board to consider affirming the superintendent's decision on HIB incidents 16E07, 16R02, and 16R03 for the reasons set forth in each of those reports. Can I have a second?
Second.
Ginny.
Mark Friedman,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Rob Garrison.
Yes.
Chris Langhart.
Yes.
Ginny Lights.
Yes.
Gretchen Olig.
Yes.
Peggy Oster.
Yes.
Charles Ostroff.
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes.
Nothing further, Chris?
Nothing further, sorry.
Curriculum, instruction, and program, Peggy.
I'd like the board to consider item number 1 under curriculum, approving the schedules for field trips and overnight field trips. And I want to make a note that this does include 2 overnight field trips, which have been approved in the past. It is the Westfield High School Youth and Government, and they go to the Youth and Government Conference every year. The 2 trips is, one is a separate entity, which is the officers go down a day early, and the rest of the club will go down for the weekend, and it is over spring break, so there's no loss of school.
Second. Ginny, thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Any other questions or comments on item number 1? Dana?
Mark Friedman,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Rob Garrison.
Yes.
Chris Langhart.
Yes.
Ginny Lights.
Yes.
Gretchen Olig.
Yes.
Peggy Oster.
Yes.
Charles Ostroff.
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes.
I'd like the board to consider item number 2 for first reading of curricula for 3 classes. One is Biology 1, which is in the 5-year cycle to review the curricula for that particular class. And the other 2, Global Citizen and Women's Studies, are new additions to our program of studies at the high school. Just say a little bit, the teachers for each of these classes came forth and talked about the work that they put together to create the new classes, if we talk about the 2 humanities classes. Global Citizen will provide us another year of a humanities program, which we will now have a 9th grade humanities program, an 11th grade humanities program, and this will be put in place as a 12th grade humanities program. And the Women's Studies class is a half-year elective class that's being added to the program of studies. Both the 2 teachers who brought it forth, Jason Grant and Rebecca McGrath, were so excited about this program. It was wonderful to see how they reacted to students' interest in adding this class to our elective program, and the work that they put into it to present to us. And the Biology 1 class, as I said, is just the 5-year review of the curricula. Both Dr. Stonebeck and Mr. Boyle presented the class extremely well. There aren't a lot of changes to that class. There are no new books that are needed at this point in time. But they did talk about the change in the program and how important it is to have hands-on experimentation and so forth. And at that meeting, I spoke to them about, what they thought they would need. If we don't need books, what do we need? And they were just talking about some new instruments that would be beneficial for our science department and so forth going forward, for them to be able to do more experimentation with the kits and so forth. So I just bring that forth to the board, just so that we're aware that we don't need new books, but we do have to continue to upgrade some of the stuff in our schools, and I think it's a great way to, possibly look out there for grants and so forth for these type of items. Does anybody have any further questions?
I'd like to second your motion.
Oh, sorry. I didn't.
She was itching that whole time.
Well,
Didn't hear a word you said.
Actually, I was at the meeting, so I did hear it, and I've heard it before.
I will second it in the future first, and
Please
then go
do,
into discussion.
because it needs to be put on the table before we have the discussion.
Got it. So we have a motion, a second. Any other questions? Dana, thanks.
Mark Friedman,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Rob Garrison.
Yes.
Chris Langhart.
Yes.
Ginny Lights.
Yes.
Gretchen Olig.
Yes.
Peggy Oster.
Yes.
Charles Ostroff.
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Awesome, thank you. Finance, Mark.
Yes, I'd like the board to consider finance items 2 through 11. Number 1 was taken off for this evening. Have a second? Ginny, thank you. One comment, we'd like to accept the gift of a bishop's chair from Carolyn Flater to the Roosevelt Intermediate School of Drama Department, so thank you for that. Any questions? Okay. Dana, please.
Mark Friedman,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Rob Garrison.
Yes.
Chris Langhart.
Yes.
Ginny Lights.
Yes.
Gretchen Olig.
Yes.
Peggy Oster.
Yes.
Charles Ostroff.
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes.
If I could ask you, Dana, are you planning to redo item number 1 in the future?
I hope so. That was an award of contract to Apple. Hunterdon Services Commission, like there's HS, I can't think of the wording of it now.
Ed Services, yeah.
They run a cooperative purchasing group that we belong to. They had gone out to bid, sent us an email last week that they were ready to award. They did award a contract and that we could all award contracts. Today I got an email from them saying that there was a problem with the bid and that we couldn't move forward with awarding the contract. So that's why we moved it off. We have a couple other cooperatives we're in. They're all trying to get contracts with Apple. Since state contract with Apple has expired and they haven't renewed that. So hopefully one of them will give us an opportunity to award a contract to Apple.
Okay, nothing we did.
No.
Anything
Yeah, one
further?
more thing. We had a finance committee meeting on Friday, February 12th. I passed the minutes around to the board. Just a couple of things that we went through that I'll call out. Dana walked us through our maintenance and capital reserves, which is something where, based upon monies that we can put away for projects and that we may need to do. She walks us through at just about each of our meetings the dollar value that's in each of those reserves and how we might be using those funds in conjunction with the facilities committee. We seem to be continuing to be able to manage those funds. A number of years ago, we had very limited funds in those reserves, and we've constantly been replenishing and then using them for projects that are important to keeping the district running, the facilities running. So, and Dana's a good steward of that information, and more importantly, us being able to put money into those reserves. So thanks for that. We also talked a little bit about the bond sale. We have counsel that will be working with us to help time the sale of those bonds, and they periodically review the bond debt that we've got, whether it can be refinanced, and we believe that there are some bonds that will be refinanced middle of this year. And then the last thing, which you'll hear a little bit about, we talked a bit about the budget and what the first pass looks like, and we had some conversation about that. So that's it.
Maybe one, as we get a little bit further along, if there are facilities projects that are going to be done in the normal course, apart from the work we're doing, bond-related stuff, Brendan, maybe in the next couple months, you can give us an update on the work that's going to be done this summer. That'd be great. I kind of lose sight of it. Thanks, Mark. Legislation, Brendan, any report?
The governor released his plan for the budget coming up. He plans to increase school aid across all districts by about $100 million. Sounds like a lot until you realize that there's 700 school districts. But no, at least as of today, nobody's aid should be going down.
We'll know for sure, hopefully this week.
Yeah, probably by the end of this week, yeah.
Okay. Fingers crossed. Technology, Mitch?
No report tonight.
I'd ask the board to note the notes for the record. Do we have any unfinished business? New business? Liaison reports? Jenny?
I attended a Union County Ed Services Commission meeting, Board of Directors, on February 3rd. Of note, they identified the 2016-17 tuition rates and fees, and I brought copies to Dana, who has already received them. So, interestingly, most fee increases were at the 2% level, except for personal aids for 3 of their schools went up 14% to $45,000. And I understand that there will be, I believe this is confirmed. I noted that Project Search, which Union County Ed Services Commission is partnering with Department of Education, Department of Labor, Transition Services, Alice Honeycutt's department. And Westfield will have, or has at least applied for, I think, 3 students to participate starting in September. So this is an opportunity to place students in a transition setting, and I believe the site is going to be Overlook Hospital. So it's a very exciting opportunity for kids who will be able to be in a work environment as they're nearing their age-out limit from our school setting. So we thank Alice and her participation, and I was very happy to see that our district has already initiated the contacts to make this happen. It's a new venture. So,
Thanks. Any other liaison reports?
I have a report from the Roosevelt PTSO. Just a couple things. They're celebrating Black History Month, and the Nork Boys Choir is coming to sing with Sharps and Flats. And Spirit Week, which is a big deal at Roosevelt, is going to be from the 22nd to the 26th. And the other thing that they want to bring forth at a PTC meeting is to discuss security issues during elections at Roosevelt. They were a little uncomfortable and so forth, and they just, before we, bring another election, that we be voting at Roosevelt, that we talk about security at the schools for when we have elections.
Was there a reason they were
did they note
uncomfortable?
something of different?
They just didn't feel comfortable, I think, that there were people coming and going.
Coming and going, yeah.
It's vastly improved over what it had been 3 years ago, when we moved it out of most of the schools to gyms that could be divided.
Well, keep us in the loop. To the extent that there's conversation at the PTC level, let us know, and let's follow up and make sure.
Yeah, Brendan is correct. A little over 3 years ago, we actually did go to the County Board of Elections because at that point, I believe, at least 8 of our buildings had voting, and every building is a little bit different the way it's situated. And as Brendan noted, where we have the voting now, most of it in our buildings would be at the high school, Roosevelt and Edison, and they have gyms that are somewhat, they're part of the school, but there's one entrance to them more or less. And they're somewhat isolated, as opposed to having to walk through the hallway and past classrooms to get to a place to vote, which used to be the case. And there's one exemption from that, but that school we actually have security during the school day. So,
Right. I think this came about from parents who had concerns on the time of the election and brought their concerns to Mr. Carey.
Sure, and we can certainly, speak more to them about it.
So at this point, we're going to adjourn briefly, move upstairs to continue the public portion of the meeting, but we're going to move into a workshop to talk about the budget. So we'll see you upstairs in a few minutes.